around, okay, AI is going to replace SDRs, right?
Right.
That thing, which I know some people are still talking about today. By and large, at least in our experience with the purview that we have, the companies that we work with, those conversations aren't really happening anymore. And it's about, okay, where can we shave? How can we make sure that 2 CSMs, for example, are having the efficiency and effectiveness of 3 by empowering those 2 with a little bit of AI sprinkled on top.
Yeah. Welcome back, everyone. This is Coach K. I'm really excited. It's Matt Green and he's my guest today. Super excited to have you. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. I'm a big fan. I helped facilitate some sessions for Sales Assembly in the past. Enjoyed it. The people there were awesome. Love the feedback from the team and working with you all. Like, you were very kind. In fact, I have my tag that I got, which is awesome. Really cool to be a part of it. I would love to hear more of how the heck you got to be the CRO of Sales Assembly and that journey of yours. If you don't mind, tell us a little bit.
Yeah, like a lot of other things in my life, more luck than skill, if I'm being honest. But yeah, depending on how far back you want to go. After I graduated school, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I studied criminal justice because I thought I wanted to go to the FBI. And then the day I graduated, I woke up, I'm like, shit, I don't really want to do that anymore. But I had this degree in criminal justice. Okay, what am I going to do? Ended up working in sales. Ended up being halfway decent at it, started really in finance, and then moved out here to Chicago to work with JP Morgan, opened up an office there, did some stuff in investment banking for a few years, and then got recruited to lead sales at a Series A startup here in Chicago. Right around that time is when I met my now business partner, Jeff Ross, the CEO and the co-founder here at Sales Assembly. We worked together there, and then we both were impacted by layoffs at that same company back in 2016 and kicked around a couple of ideas. We're at this inflection point. Do we go find W-2 jobs, or do we, try to kick around some ideas as far as maybe striking out on our own? Tried 1 or 2 things that didn't work. Jeff had the idea for Sales Assembly. We tried this. It ended up working, and we've been doing it for about 7 years now.
Love it. Love it. So for those who may not be living under a rock and don't know what Sales Assembly is, give me the 30-second spiel. What's Sales Assembly?
Yeah, Sales Assembly, what we provide is day-to-day skills training for the go-to-market teams of B2B software companies. I work with a few hundred B2B software companies today. Where we sit in the ecosystem when you think about training, you have product training, you have process training, methodology, medpic, all that good stuff. Then you have skills training. Right? Enablement leaders or sales leaders, they tend to focus all of their time on product and process training, leaves this gap for skills training, teaching the AEs how to get better at negotiation, teaching the CSMs how to get better at multi-threading. That's where Sales Assembly slots into all these companies to provide all that ongoing training throughout the year.
I love it. It's crazy when you think about the gaps that people have. It's like why Pavilion, why yourselves exist, because there's these places that a regular bachelor's degree or MBA doesn't fit, and it's hard to find any support for it. I did the negotiation class, and then I did the AI and prospecting class, which was way fun. But you offer a ton of variety of stuff. Like, I saw your curriculum. It's pretty expansive, right? So you could work with either sales leaders or sales reps on pretty much anything.
Yeah. So right now we're facilitating plus or minus 300 or so live training courses throughout the year. Right. And yeah, to your point, for either the sales teams or the post-sales teams and frontline leadership. So I like to think that we do offer a lot, but 2 things are all focused on skills-based training, and they're all focused on the go-to-market teams of B2B technology companies, because we think that regardless of the product that you sell or who you sell it to, couple of fundamentals when you look under the hood as far as what makes you successful in your roles. That's the kind of stuff that we focus our training and development on throughout the year.
Love it. So if I can ask, roundaboutly, how many people go through your 300 different live events in a year's time, usually?
Yeah, it's in the thousands. Yeah, there's a lot.
So with that, and the reason why I asked, because the whole topic of this podcast is the gap in between playbooks or enablement, and I don't mean enablement as in the team, but more enablement of what's provided to a salesperson, and then the actual execution of skills, methodology, et cetera, inside of their sales process. Because you have your lens, which is obviously unique to see it across different teams and industries and size of companies, that kind of stuff. What do you see is the gap in between that and like actually getting stuff done?
I wish that I could come up with only one answer.
Right.
If I did have to pinpoint one answer, I'd say it is consistency, right? The consistency or lack thereof, it tends to be the root of all these different gaps that you mentioned before. Just think about the concept of a sales process or a methodology. A lot of leaders, they make this, do we want spice? Do we want medic, medpic, whatever the case may be?
Right. Right.
My view on that, just again, and to be clear, I'm not an enablement leader. I do not have an enablement background, but to your point, I have what I like to think is a bird's eye view across a few hundred, good sample size of B2B
Right.
tech companies. It's less about the process or methodology that you choose, and it's more about choosing one that's remaining consistent on it, right? Because anything that
Yep.
you do, as long as it's consistent, that's when it becomes measurable, right? And as long as it becomes measurable, the different components become measurable, then you could pinpoint, okay, here's what's working, here's what's not working, and here's maybe where we need to lean in from an enablement, in air quotes, perspective to fill whatever gaps or deficiencies might exist.
What kind of thing, when you have other VPs of sales or CROs, that kind of thing, they come to you and they say, hey, we have this methodology and it's just not getting it done. So consistency, obviously, reinforcement, that kind of thing is there. But like what, from the skills point of view or from like sales assembly, what is the thing you like to focus on to say, okay, you got to lock down these 4 or 5 main things?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Our response to that, and takes some sales leaders aback, when we're talking about this, is that we think that at least as it relates to how we add value and where we kind of slot in and support these companies,
Yep.
methodologies are relevant. The sales process is relevant to an extent, right? And by that, and I hate using sports analogies, but think of
Okay.
a go-to-market team as like a basketball team, right? The coach, the VP of sales, the enablement leader, he or she, they're the ones that are coming up with the methodology, with the process. That is the team's playbook. Where does sales assembly come in? And this is where the big gap is in the ecosystem. We're the trainers, right? We're making sure that people are doing their push-ups, their sit-ups, running their laps, all things that are going to make them more successful at executing whatever that playbook is, regardless of what that playbook is. When leaders come to us and say, okay, we got this process, it's not really working. It's like, is the process not working? Or are your reps just not effective enough at executing these different stages in the process, right? Because those are two different issues.
Yep.
That if the answer is yes, then it becomes, okay, it's not really the process itself that's working. We just need to get your reps better at, putting it bluntly, it's just moving these opportunities through the pipeline, right? And that is
Right.
much indicative of a skill issue rather than a process issue.
I've been a part of both being trained on or being a trainer in 6 different methodologies, something like that. And I can go to the point where when I think of the top reps, it wasn't methodology adoption that made them top reps. It was the skills that they would have needed no matter what the methodology was, like active listening or rapport building or basic question discovery stuff that had nothing to do with methodology. And it's like, I always think about that. I'm like, I see these patterns in what makes someone really good that doesn't methodology. Not that it's bad. It's good to have the process. And like you said, it's the consistency that makes sure the pace keeps up. But the gaps usually is in the things that's not methodology covered. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So do you find the same thing to where you find consistent patterns? And like, I'll give you another example where when I come into enablement as a consultant or a full-time employee, every single place I've been at, I've never had a team who was really good at discovery. Never. I've
Mhm.
always had to help with that. And every time I talk to someone, everyone else says we all suck at discovery. It's amazing we never get things sold. But do you ever feel like there's things like that are consistent across all companies? You're like, we always know this is usually an issue for most people, this competency, skill, whatever.
Yeah, we do see that. And especially in this day and age, especially when over the past few quarters, more and more companies have shifted their focus towards selling into the enterprise. And, that they have a team
Yep.
of reps that don't have experience in doing that they don't have their heads around, okay, how different is this motion on the concept of, again, doing an effective or advanced discovery on things like multi-threading into more buyers, more stakeholders than they're used to multi-threading
Right.
into. So we see that a lot. Where we also see that a lot is on the post-sales side of the house.
Yeah.
So there's been this mad dash over the past year and a half of, okay, how do we get our CSM teams, these individuals that we hired primarily because they're industry domain experts or really great at project management. We need them to become a little bit more commercially minded. We need them to start focusing more on driving revenue and not simply reaching out to customers when they're 60 days away from the renewal and saying, hey, you're going to renew in 60 days. So again, big areas of opportunity for improvement on that side as well.
Does Sales Assembly have, like, when a sales leader, CRO, VP of sales come in and says, hey, we got to figure out what the heck our execution thing is. Do you have a methodology yourself or a system? You say, okay, we're going to take you through this whatever step system and figure out what's going on. Do you have anything like that you can give any advice on?
We don't. So we don't directly have anything like that. Where we can be valuable in when we get a question like that is finding an opportunity to leverage the community of sorts, the ecosystem that we built to make sure that they are going to get answers or support from their direct counterparts, people that are doing their exact same job, leading sales organizations at other B2B tech companies. And actually, one avenue that we have to do that's relatively consistent is every month we have a standing, what we call peer group call. It's just a Zoom call like this, where we bring together all the VPs of sales and CROs of all the companies that we work with. And that's not a training session. The sole point of that monthly gathering is for leaders to bring questions exactly like that to a room full of 25, 50, 60 of their peers. Just show up and say, okay, I'm working on this or I'm struggling with that. What advice would you have for me, or what would you all do in my situation? Then just give them the opportunity to exchange ideas back and forth.
And you tell me, you guys charge for that? Or is that something you guys just offer as a resource for people?
Yeah, so traditionally that is available only to leaders of companies that are members.
You're working with you? Yeah.
But to be fair, at the same time, as I meet in my travels, other heads of sales that theoretically would find value in something like that,
Right.
I'm always happy to welcome those types of folks as our guests to that type of forum if they have questions or challenges that they'd want to bring to the group.
I'll make sure part of the show notes I include, obviously I'll have the website for you guys on there too, but I'll make sure we get your contact info there, because I find a lot of times it's having the space or time to actually do that. Because otherwise, like with me in the enablement, unless I had a separate community I could actually reach out to people, or I took the time to, I don't usually have another enablement cohort inside of my company to leverage. So I love that you're doing that. Going with that, if I can ask, and I don't know if you analyze this, but when you have these monthly meetings, I would think they give you a good pulse on what people are dealing with now. What are you seeing as patterns? Like, it's August when we're recording this. For the last quarter, what are some of the patterns you're seeing coming up in those conversations?
Yeah, big patterns as far as just big rocks, big topics that people are bringing to the table. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but going back to what we were talking about a moment ago, selling into the enterprise and how do we get our CSMs to be more commercially minded? Those have been two big rocks. Another big rock, as you can imagine, has been just top of funnel, right? What's working, what's not working. A lot of companies are trying to make a big push towards getting back in person with their prospects. So we see a lot of companies starting to allocate budget for travel and going to conferences, and even really just making sure that they're prioritizing doing on-sites with prospects of theirs. So we're seeing a lot of that. But the one thing that I'll share, just coming off of the completely terrible year that the ecosystem had in 2023, a lot more optimism. And we've seen that quarter after quarter this year. By and large, at least once a quarter when we host these gatherings, you will have someone just raise their hand and say, okay, how's everyone's forecast looking, right? How's everyone feeling?
How are you feeling? Yeah.
Yeah. And January, February is a little bit of cautious optimism.
Right.
July, August, much more optimism, right? It's not that things are back to 2022 levels, far from it, but things are consistent now. Going back to the theme that we mentioned a few moments ago, and as long as things are consistent, people can start planning around it. They can start hiring people because, again, they have good plans in place and good metrics that they could count on.
How do you see technology, whether it's AI or not? Because GTM Buddy is just-in-time and tech impact being made to the execution point. And do you have any examples of anything that you see as that's awesome that you can share?
Yeah, what we're seeing, again, comparing this to conversations we're having last year, what we've seen is fewer conversations around AI doing big things and more conversations around AI doing a lot of really small things. But those lots of small things, when you add them all together, it's, oh yeah, in retrospect, this is one big thing, right?
Yeah.
We see a lot of conversations around just folks figuring out, okay, how do we add just some level, some modicum of efficiency throughout every stage of our, not only our pre-sales process, but also our
Yep.
post-sales client interaction process versus, again, a year and a half ago, a lot of conversations around, okay, AI is going to replace SDRs, right?
Right.
That
Yeah.
whole thing, which I know some people are still talking about today. By and large, at least in our experience with the purview that we have, the companies that we work with, those conversations aren't really happening anymore. And it's about, okay, where can we shave? How can we make sure that two CSMs, for example, are having the efficiency and effectiveness of three by empowering those two
Right.
with a little bit of AI sprinkled on top?
Yeah. How do you feel like the appetite, VPs of sales, CROs in general, is when it comes to we need to do something different to execute better from a leader point of view? Because obviously they're not going to be there and hold people's hands as you do stuff. But do you see any change in this last year when it comes to like the leaders' attitudes around execution?
Yeah, we do. Last year, they weren't really thinking about, okay, on the one hand, they were thinking about areas of opportunity for improvement, areas for change, but most of it, think about, okay, how do I keep my head above water and make sure that my company remains afloat? Looking
Yeah.
out for number one before anything else. But yes, what we've seen, the biggest change that we've seen this year, at least compared to last year, as far, again, just general change and tying it back to enablement, is many more companies and many more leaders understanding the importance of investing in the development of their people. It seems like in 2021, 2022, there was a lack of clarity, and to an extent that there still is,
Yeah,
regarding
there still is. Yeah.
what they're meant to do, how they're meant to do it. We see a lot of leaders now in 2024 being much more laser focused on figuring out the answer to that question, right? Not only ecosystem wide, but more importantly, as it relates to their specific company, because their teams are smaller than they were before. Probably the goals haven't changed that much. If they
Yeah.
decrease, it's all about, okay, we really have to enable and empower the team that we have right now.
Yeah. Um, there's this version of enablement that is reactive, and that's both fault of the leaders and the enablement team. And there's the other side, which is more like this of saying leaders in, it's more of a strategic function and we're executing. We're there to help performance. What do you think the difference is between the two? Why does that exist?
I think that a lot of things in different companies, it's all based on the mentality of the people at the top. If executive level leadership at people at the top, if their view of enablement is, no, it's onboarding, right? It's onboarding new hires and it's product marketing. It's
Yeah.
like that is what enablement is going to be within the organization. Fortunately, we see more and more leaders coming around to the, in my mind, the correct concept of enablement being a strategic partner, not just focus on product marketing, not just focus on, okay, again, let's get you dialed in on the messaging, but
Right.
really invested in, okay, let's create a culture of top performers, right? Let's not only work to build and implement sales processes, do so consistently, but also measure things so that we could identify not only where gaps exist within the team, but more importantly, within the individuals within the team.
Right.
And let's deliver training and let's deliver resources to help fill these very targeted gaps rather than doing just broad-based training for the sake of training, and doing that in much
Yeah.
more reporting fashion as opposed to just onboarding new hires and focusing on loading product marketing related decks into HighSpot or Seismic or something like that.
A lot of people view enablement as just the training sessions, whereas enablement is to me, that's a tool or arrow in the quiver. It's not the entire thing, right? So what are you seeing is making impact outside of just knowledge transfer, group training type stuff? What's the thing that actually helps people get it done on the other side from your lens as sales assembly? Because this is your whole thing is getting people to apply in real life. How do you guys do that?
Yeah, it's thinking about training as not in a moment of time sort of concept, right? The,
Yeah.
the reason why a lot of training, at least from the outside looking in, is I'm not sure if it's going to stick, is there's really no plan for reinforcement, no plan for teach backs. And I think that's where enablement can and should, I know a lot of them do already, but broad-based can and should focus more of their time if they want the training to be effective. Just not really think about, okay, we've done the training and therefore it's done. It's no training, to your point, it's just one component of this larger
Right.
method around filling whatever gaps might exist within individual contributors or frontline leaders, whoever they're focused on delivering trainings to. One of the things that we're really mindful of here at Sales Assembly, and we do a little bit to solve for this, but again, we can't do the entire job of an enablement leader, is there's this concept called the forgetting curve, right? Where the concept being, of course, I'm sure many listeners are familiar, after training, if you don't reinforce it in some way, shape, or form by day 7, you're going to lose 50% of the training that was imparted. And if you don't apply something that you learn within the first 30 days, then you're going to lose something like 90% of what you're taught. So it's finding ways strategically post-training to make sure that you're, again, providing reinforcement opportunities, but also providing opportunities for them to apply what they've learned to real world situations. That's really the only way that it's going to stick.
Have you seen that change at all? Because AI is coming to a certain level that could possibly change the process or ability we have to do exactly what you're talking about. Like, how do we actually apply or have practice time to apply or get instant feedback or that kind of stuff? Do you find with Sales Assembly specifically, are you shifting any of that as a result of latest tech or like trying to implement or experiment with different things to help with that process?
Yeah, short answer, yes. So we have explored a few of these different platforms that are out there. One example is we work with a company called Nooks, and many of the listeners might be familiar, but that is a perfect example where we are providing training on cold calling best practices. Nooks is a platform, which is a platform based all around cold calling. They do have an AI component where it's great. Let me take what I learned. Let me go role play with this AI, so to speak. And this platform is going to give me real-time feedback. It's going to feed the feedback to my manager so that he or she is going to be able to help me when it comes to my improvement journey. So we do see a lot of companies leveraging these platforms, again, just to help make the training stick.
Looking forward, and this is more like your wish list, is there a tech or ability you're like, I wish I had something that could do this thing that Sales Assembly would offer that would be pretty cool? You've ever thought about?
Short answer, yes. One of the things that we started exploring recently, we've had a couple of conversations with potential partners around this, is exactly like I said before. If we provide a training session on cold calling, on discovery, on negotiation, on value articulation, whatever the case may be, and with an opportunity for the participants that went through that training to immediately, within the first 24, 48 hours after that training session, for example, practice what they learned with an AI type of environment, right? And again, have that feedback filter back to their manager so that they could not only, number one, see, again, how this individual is progressing as far as their learning journey, but number two, selfishly, further quantify the impact that Sales Assembly is having on personal and professional development.
Yeah. What do you think will not change even with technology going as it is? What won't change when it comes to this whole skill development process?
It's an interesting question. What I would say will not change, what I truly do believe will remain consistent, is some of the core skills themselves that we'll always need. Not only because new salespeople are coming up in the industry and may need to be trained, but the ecosystem has always changed. Take a look at the past 4 years. Over the past 4 years, we've lived through 3 different types of economies. Try selling to negotiating with procurement in 2020 versus 2022 versus 2024. It's 3 completely different things. So although it's easy to think about like, okay, the skill negotiation, I've taken negotiation training before, I'm good. Well, have you trained on negotiation as it relates to selling to the buyers that you're selling into in 2024 versus 2022 or 2021? So make sure that we're always remaining progressive and relevant with the content that is being trained on. That is something that I don't think is ever going to change.
If you could tell listeners listening in, and we're talking the VPs of sales or revenue leaders, not so much the lagging indicators, but what do you say are leading indicators to know if execution is actually shifting that you can plan on the lagging indicators following? What do you usually think?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't know if I have a good answer for that right now. I'll have to think on that, and I'll think on that and I'll get back to you because
Do it. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
It's not easy because I've asked this question for years and it kind of changes, but I find patterns, but I don't know if I have the answer either. Just
the cop-out answer would be depends on the organization, the lived experience of the leader and what he or she, what they know about the industry, about their company. But yeah, that one's tough. Yeah, I'll have to get back to you on that.
I'll let you punt that one. That's okay. With that being said, I'll end with this. With sales leaders who may be feeling like execution is a challenge or they're missing the gap on something, like you say, focus on these 3 things and it will make a difference. What would you advise?
Yeah, just again, broad-based discovery is always going to be number one, right? I think even to this day, discovery by and large, a lot of companies just do it, the reps themselves do it very ineffectively. Qualification is going to be another one. If you're going to go through all this trouble, beating down the doors, making sure that you're getting meetings and then having those meetings, let's make sure that as your reps are going to continue taking their time investing and trying to develop close-won deals, that they're actually talking to the right people. Not only the right people that are going to sign contracts in the short term, but are going to provide good LTV to CAC ratio for the organization in the long term. Make sure that you're setting your post-sales team up for success. And then last but not least, I would say just this concept of value articulation, right? We all have read and heard the stats that buyers are doing a hell of a lot more research on their own. Chances are they're not even talking with a sales rep until they're getting close to making a decision, right? So how do you win out against the competition is by really just leaning into this concept of, again, articulating value in a clear and compelling way, articulating value in a way that differentiates you from any competitors that you have in the space, but doesn't necessarily disparage them. That's a really fine line to, and then tying this together with value, making sure that every interaction that you have with your potential buyers, you are adding some type of value, not explaining your value, but providing some type of value, right?
Yeah.
Those are going to be the 3 big things that, at least from where we're sitting, tend to make a big difference when they're done correctly.
I'm asking one follow-up question because I'm curious, thinking about it out loud to myself in my brain, which is not out loud, but it's in my brain. Give me that last example you said of making sure each interaction has value with it. Can you give an example of what you tell people what that even means?
Yeah, let's hypothetical example, great meeting prospect, send the follow-up, put together resources, business case, whatever the case may be. And what is the next step after you don't hear back from that prospect, right? A lot of, okay, what'd you think about this? Hey, did you read the email? This, that, and the other thing is no. Sales reps, as they're pushing opportunities throughout their sales cycle, they need to start thinking more like we train BDRs and SDRs to, right? Where it's not just cold emailing people and saying, hey, do you want to take a meeting with me? Here's what we do. So no, it's planting seeds, providing value so that you're earning the right to ask a meeting. Same thing for sellers, right? As you're going through the sales process, you have to continuously earn the right to have that buyer continue to engage with you. And that does not include sending emails just saying, hey, what'd you think of this proposal? It is rather, if we're here at Sales Assembly, hey, I know that you're hiring a whole bunch of AEs. I know that training on LinkedIn is going to be a big priority for you. By the way, here's this clip of this session we did on multi-threading the other day. Feel free to pass this along to your reps.
Totally.
The content is going to be valuable. So just doing things like that rather than just, again, trying to force the square peg into the round hole throughout the sales cycle. That's what I talk about when I talk about adding value and trying to teach the prospect something throughout every interaction.
So they actually look forward to hearing from you instead of going, oh, here's another annoying email. I love that.
Exactly.
Matt, thank you so much. Salesassembly.com, obviously, as we can find you, and I'll include your LinkedIn link is there as well. And just a reminder to all sales leaders, people listening, that you have that monthly call with VPs of sales who are clients of yours. I think if they ever want to get a taste of that, to take you up on the guest offer, I think it would be pretty rad. So I'll make sure we have your info there. So if anybody wants to, they can just come and get in touch with you, which would be cool.
Yeah, I love that.
Cool. Thank you again, my man. Appreciate you so much. And you and the team, just want to tell you thank you for all you guys do at Sales Assembly, and just appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for the continued partnership.